Hello and welcome to Talkin' Wrestling with Pondwater Dave. My name is Justin Davis, and as always, I'm joined by the namesake of this show, the man who counted Ric Flair's last match, Mr. Pondwater Dave Miller. And in the absence of Miss Amy Vaughn, we have a whole house full of guests with us here today to talk about the Iron Claw movie. We have Mr. Lance Peterson from the World Class Cast podcast, who is back on the show with us for the second time. Thank you, Lance. We have Mr. Terry Weaver from the T&A Top Ten podcast, talking college football over there with their show with that heel and Andrew. And of course, we have Ike Miller, Pondwater Dave's little brother.
From my mother.
Yeah, from the same mother. So welcome, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thank y'all for being here tonight. We're so excited to have this roundtable and talk about this movie. We've all seen it. I think we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. But before we get started, how's everybody's Christmas?
It was good here.
Survived the in-laws. Did good.
Yeah. Well,
Another year down.
I got to see my brother this year, so that was nice. We don't get to see each other near enough, and got a new grandbaby. So we went to his house, and I got to spend the day with Hessie. So that was kind of a neat Christmas. We're gonna have our big Mississippi Christmas this weekend with Stephanie's kids and our grandkids. So half the living room in there. There's presents all over. So we got us a puppy. So we got a new puppy. So it's a challenge to keep him from opening the presents because he loves to chew up paper. And we're also joined by my sister-in-law. Hey, Nikki.
Hey guys, how are you?
All right. Well, right off the bat, I'm gonna play a video from Amy because she had a question, and I think it's a good one to start off with. So let's hear from Amy real quick.
Hey guys, I know I'm not there, but I got a couple questions for you all. I would love to know the overall thoughts from Lance, Ike, and Dave. Were you able to take yourself out of the realm of knowing so much about WCCW? Because there were definitely some things, like that were off. I mean, obviously we all know Chris is not even in the movie. He's a brother that passed away also. But, there were some things that maybe were a little out of sync or just didn't make it, that were, what do they call it? Creatively, rearranged. So I wanted to know from you three, since you know a lot about WCCW, were you able to watch this movie as just a movie and not a WCCW documentary?
All right. Ike, what do you think?
That was my struggle. I had a real hard time doing it. From things like somebody gets thrown over the top rope and it wasn't a DQ. Kerry didn't win the title, go have a beer and have a motorcycle accident that night. It wasn't anything. If I'm not mistaken, he had an accident riding his bike in the rain, if I'm not mistaken. I had a struggle with it. I knew that Fritz didn't tell Kerry that, it was time to get into the family business and forget college.
Yeah.
So,
but going into this movie, didn't we know we were going to have to take a bite on some of those things? You knew they were going to monetize it a little bit, I guess. But I'm sure I completely get your point there. Lance, what do you think about it?
Well, I'm all about the timeline, and you just had to throw it out the window. That's the biggest part for me. I just know the timeline, very detailed, small details. And, the way they jumbled it up, it's like they took their life and cut up the pieces and threw it on the floor and picked it back up and sewed it back together. Some of the things that were out of order, and then at the end, I don't want to go into details yet. We'll talk later. But, Jarrett at the end buying this business from Kevin. And we all know Kevin and Jarrett, they did not mix well, not at all. It was all, Fritz had wanted out of it. It was Fritz's idea to do that. And, that was hard. The timeline problems could have been solved by maybe showing a newscast or somebody updating, the Von Erichs that, today, the funeral of David Von Erich. And even though they panned out and showed a crowd, it didn't give it, what it was really like at David's funeral. And we have all the newspaper clippings. Those are easy to find. So, the timeline issues were the biggest thing. I tried to relax on the others, but you can't get past Zac Efron's tan and his size compared to everyone else. Couldn't we have at least gotten Carrie a tan in this movie? I mean, that guy, Jeremy, he worked out and you can see the cuts in his chest, but he's not Carrie. And we know Carrie was a rock star.
That's true.
They
And
show a clip of Carrie in the rain and then cut back to this guy playing Carrie. It wasn't even close.
well, I knew going in, I already knew that it was going to be, I knew it was going to be off. And I tried to go in open-minded. But let me start off first saying, I loved this movie. I loved the acting. I loved the storytelling, but I loved it more a couple of days after I saw it. And I left the movie very conflicted about what I'd just seen. I don't want to front load everything and we're going to get there. But I mean, first off, when the movie started and they showed that ring, the way the ring was lit for Fritz Von Erich to have a match, I thought the background on Fritz was brilliant. I thought it was well done. I think wrestling should be presented in a dark arena with a lit ring. And all you can see is just a few ringside chairs. And that's how Reunion Arena was lit. And I missed that. And we had that at Ric Flair's last match. And it was pretty cool. So right out of the gate, I was excited about that. And, but there was little things that, like I said, the guy got thrown over the top rope. Okay. They based it around Kevin being the Texas heavyweight champion. Kevin was the American heavyweight champion. I mean, it was just the storytelling of it. I've had the belt nerds pick apart the belts. But my argument back to one of them, our very, very good friend, Russ Miller, I said, but did you notice that the T-shirts that the boys wore when they were wearing their own merch was the actual actors from the movies? He said, oh, yeah, that was cool. And Carrie's ring robe at Texas Stadium was cool. And I said, so ignore the belts. I mean,
good point.
You noticed what was cool, so don't tell me what wasn't. I mean, they're props. They were non-logoed props. And, I know that they took the Harley Race Kevin Von Erich story was the David Von Erich Harley Race story. Because David got there first. But they tell the story with the big brother bringing David up and then Carrie coming home and joining the business. And I will say right off the bat, and we'll get into it deeper as we go, I don't like how Fritz Von Erich was portrayed. And I don't like how Carrie Von Erich was portrayed. Their characters. Jeremy Allen White did an incredible job playing Carrie Von Erich. His acting was brilliant. And I think that Holt McCalley, who played Fritz Von Erich, should be nominated for an Oscar. I think his acting was incredible. I think Zac Efron did a great job. Lily James, can't say enough about her. Especially since I know nothing about Kevin's wife. So I don't know how it was. So, but her acting, she was incredible in this movie. That being said, to answer Amy's question is no, I couldn't separate through the movie. And in the moment I couldn't separate it, but it didn't cause me to hate it. Because I went in with an open mind. If I knew absolutely nothing about it and I hadn't had some heads up, and And the trailer gave us a pretty good heads up. But Lance, did you get goosebumps? Did you get goosebumps when
Yeah,
you
it
saw
was
the
fun.
sportatorium?
Yeah, that sportatorium shot was incredible from the outside, and you could pick it apart. And I can't pick it apart. Oh, it was at the wrong angle. The downtown would be on the other side. I know what you're thinking, or the floor was concrete versus wood. But it was still fun, and they put so much effort into that was great. And those little details you said about them wearing their shirts, that was really cool, because David did wear that dark gray that had the World Class logo, and Mike was wearing the shirt that he's on, that blue with the cutoffs. They did some other things. They, some other shirts that they wore. There was Kevin wearing that yellow fishnet in it that I think they had worn in one of the matches. And I didn't want to give any spoilers away. I saw it a week and a half before everybody else. I didn't see it at the premiere, but then I saw it on a special thing on December 13th. And so instead of spoilers, I started posting things on Twitter that were in the movie that really happened, like Kevin and the Claw, where Fritz had to pull him off, which was Texas Stadium '85. So I put that on there, and everybody kind of started seeing the movie this last weekend, and they realized why I put that on there, because that was it.
Yeah.
It was fun and in those ways. But I didn't have a huge problem. And I don't want people thinking I'm picking it apart. This is fun for me to pick it apart in a good way. I know what really happened and stuff. I know Kerry didn't lose his foot that night. And, I know how long, that timeline of Kerry losing his foot or Mike's sickness, is completely different.
Right. Nikki and Terry. Terry, I don't know what your exposure to World Class was prior to this movie, but I'd like to know what you and Nikki think going in and just watching the movie without really any reference point from the past.
You can go ahead and go first.
Okay. I mean, I was excited to see the movie. I had watched a couple of the documentaries about the Von Erichs before. So, I mean, I felt like I knew some of the story. It was hard for me to go in and have this one, whispering in my ear while I'm trying to watch the freaking movie. And he's like, that wasn't accurate. I'm like, just let me watch it. So I had to, I wish I had brought a muzzle or something, but anyway, I digress. But as far as like the movie and how it was put together, I really enjoyed it. The wrestling looked really, really awesome. Just thinking to, watching wrestling and seeing how it's put together, and knowing that it does take a lot of work and a lot of effort to put on a show like that. But so just kind of knowing that wasn't easy for these actors to go in and learn how to do this and put their bodies in this, in preparation for it was pretty cool. And then, knowing some of the background I was able to follow along with it. So I knew some of the areas that they spoke about, as far as the timeline was concerned. It didn't bother me as much. And that was what kind of kept me entertained, was just kind of just listening to the story and feeling the feels. I definitely felt the heartache and just the tragedy about just the story of them, and it was definitely felt it. So
What about you, Terry?
So as far as I go, I guess my wrestling fandom history is I grew up, started watching wrestling mid 80s, so I was probably a little behind, but I was also in North Alabama. So I wasn't knowledgeable about WCCW because I was a little farther east than that territory. I was right at the bottom of the Memphis territory geographically, but at that point, Vince was really starting to hit nationally when I was growing up and I was a little kid starting to watch. And I was also watching a lot of Jim Crockett. So, I knew enough just from seeing things that had been put out there, pictures, and knowing the difference in sizes of the actors and that kind of thing compared to Carrie and that kind of stuff, that there were going to be some differences. But I wasn't close enough to that to really care that much. But the thing that really got me, like I said, I watched a lot of Jim Crockett, and here comes that Ric Flair character. And I was like, that to me was the worst casting of the whole movie to me, because I was like, there's got to be somebody that can do it better than this. So I'm thinking there's just one character like that from my perspective that I grew up with. You guys had a whole family full of people. Some of them weren't even in the movie, and they acted like they didn't exist. So I bet that was kind of hard to deal with. But, I think the biggest thing I picked up on, and I guess a lot of people picked up on this, but this to me was a movie about Kevin and his family, and everything else kind of just surrounded that.
I'm glad you brought up the Ric Flair character, because that has got a lot of heat on the X gimmick here in the last few days. And I saw, I think, a tweet today that said, everybody and their brother can do a Ric Flair impersonation, except for this guy that they hired to do this in this movie.
Well, his name's Aaron Dean Eisenberg. He's not a wrestler. He's an actor. I mean, he was in Harlem Nights. He was on Bull on CBS, Dead Ringers, The Deuce. He just DC Noir. He wasn't so for an actor. My only problem, I didn't think he did it good. I mean, let's cut him a little slack too, because there's only one Nature Boy. I mean, but the wrestling part that he did, I had no problem with what he was doing in the ring. I thought, as a matter of fact, none of the actors embarrassed themselves in the ring.
I would have rather him just hired Jay White and put a wig on him and let him do it. Just let him.
You mean Jay Lethal?
I mean,
that's what I meant, Jay Lethal.
So I guess my deal is I wasn't really upset with that, but I think that was a glimpse to me that I grew up watching Ric Flair all the time. So that really, I noticed it. And that was a small piece compared to the big bunch of stuff that you guys were going to notice. Right.
Like ESPN giving them a television deal before ESPN was a thing. Fritz retiring in 79. That
is one thing I was going to ask you guys about. You mentioned ESPN because I kind of went through everything else, but I remember when I was a kid, I felt like I turned on ESPN and saw the Von Erichs, and I've tried to research
it was late
that.
in the process.
Yeah, 88.
The best
88.
Okay, 88. Because I remember I just kind of figured out at some point in elementary school that there was wrestling on ESPN, and it's stuff I hadn't seen before. So I would get off the bus and I would run home to watch it. And that was the first exposure I ever had was 88. So, obviously that was late in the process, like you said.
Yeah, they were playing the hits. That was called Legends of World Class. But they were actually on the Christian Broadcast Network.
Yeah, it's all about Channel 39 getting that production truck and then figuring out something to do with it. And that's how it came about. And then syndication went nuts. And that was, the bread and butter of the whole situation for a while. And, the ESPN thing was later, but yeah, I knew what they were getting at. One thing I do want to say back on the Flair deal, because I know everybody's coming down on it, and I understand. I watched Flair, I understand. But to somebody that has never seen Flair and they just see an actor on the screen playing a wrestler, are they going to see it any different than if they're watching wrestling? Because, to somebody who has a bad attitude towards wrestling, and we all know them, we hear it all the time from DJs on the radio sometimes that have a bad attitude on the sports channel or something about wrestling. Are they going to draw any difference between the way that guy acted as Ric Flair and the real Ric Flair? I'm afraid not. I'm afraid they would look at it the same way if they don't have a positive opinion about wrestling.
I was going to say, Ric Flair is he's nobody can do Ric Flair like Ric Flair, right? And he's going to be, he's an entertainer. So anything that someone's going to try and do, as far as Ric Flair is concerned, is going to be, or it's going to look kind of gimmicky anyway.
Well,
You
since
know,
I
sure.
did bring that one up, I'll say this and give them positive feedback on Harley Race, because I thought that was a pretty good job that guy did.
Yeah.
Oh, I did
That
too.
promo, that promo was great.
Yeah.
Really good.
And I thought the in-ring stuff was really good with him as well.
Yeah.
It was gritty. As a matter of fact, if you'll go back and you find David Von Erich wrestling Harley Race, probably at the Chase in St. Louis, I think is where it happened. It was on the St. Louis television. Fritz was at ringside. David beat him with the claw. And it was early in David's career. So you can always, when you look at how small Mike was, it makes you wonder if Mike was going to fill out like David had he not got sick, because that was a very skinny David Von Erich that the world heavyweight champion was putting over very strongly on television.
And then they bicycled that tape around. They showed that on the Channel 11 show in '77 when that happened. It was such an incredible thing that lit him on fire. And but until right up to the moment he died. When he died, he was a Missouri champ. He had lost the Missouri championship, but he was that around Christmas, Thanksgiving of '83. He'd been Missouri champ and Texas champ, and he was on top of the world against Flair and Race in St. Louis. He still had that. And in the movie, they're putting down Sam Mushnick and the NWA. When Fritz stayed loyal to the NWA, Sam Mushnick is the biggest ally of the Von Erichs, and a reason that they, headlined all those matches at the Checker Dome up in St. Louis. What they were really referring to was Crockett. And Kevin has been quoted as saying, they never knew about those guys, and they weren't getting the world champion as much. But it wasn't Sam Mushnick. He was an ally of the Von Erichs. That didn't make, that was something that really got to me.
Well, the wrestling was treated, I mean, pretty much kayfabed. They kayfabed the wrestling. Like, our world title shots had to be earned. They had to be awarded. Not that the champion's going to be in town this week and we got him.
Right.
We got him for 7 days and he'll be on the loop with us. So, I mean, they made it like a big deal, and Fritz made it because Fritz always did beat the drum that one of his boys was going to be world heavyweight champion. But that was the proud father in him. It's just that the wrestling was mostly treated as kayfabe. And
that surprised me too, that they did kayfabe it that much, like you said. Like, there's no way in hell that Fritz ever went into the room with his kids like, listen, you guys got to work hard for this or you'll never get a chance at this title. It's like, I was surprised by how hard they kayfabed that, really.
Yeah, but that's because it's not a wrestling movie. It's a story about a family. And the one driving thing that I noticed is that you could tell the how much those brothers loved each other strongly came through.
Yes.
Them sneaking out and having Mike's back to go play a gig.
I like Kerry would get me a hamburger if he was here. I like that part.
Yeah,
that was, man, how fantastic was that guy playing Mike? I think we all like it because we hope that Mike was really like that in real life, because all we ever saw, unfortunately, was him on interviews with being marble mouthed. And I hate to say that. I know Mike's career really well. I defended up and down. He progressed the entire time he wrestled. Even he came back, I think he was in better shape than what people used the excuse. It might have changed his personality some. He did have some problems after he was sick, but in the ring, you never see a real problem until the very end, right before he passed away. There was one match where he's lost, but this guy in the movie played it so well. And, I just loved it. And then they do that press conference, which was real. They did do a press conference with Mike up there. Yeah, I have pictures of the newspaper clippings of it. It was a big deal here. And, and he was a little more verbal than what he was in that press conference and stuff.
Not
I mean,
much.
he could talk.
But
still, it was very uncomfortable because he was so real life sick and thin, and but I still don't know where they overplayed. We know we've got pictures of Mike being a goofball with people. I see, where's a picture of Terry Gordy kissing him on the cheek and him doing other goofball stuff. So it's great to know he had that personality. It's just unfortunate we didn't see that when he wrestled. We didn't see a lot of Mike outside the ring.
Let's go back to the video and let's talk about the Von Erich curse. Let's hear Amy's take on it real quick.
Okay, here's another question for you guys. Do you like the way they use the curse, quote unquote, the Von Erich curse in the movie? I thought it was an interesting way of bringing it up. I mean, I think the curse itself was not something, or again, people saying it was a curse. I mean, I don't think it happened after the first son, but after a couple sons, I do think maybe there were some rumblings about that. But so my question is, did you like the way that they incorporated the Von Erich curse?
So what do y'all think? I thought they beat that drum way too hard. And it wasn't a thing until a current affair.
It wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Justin.
I was just gonna say I'd never heard of it until like after Carrie's death, and then like years after that is when people really first, I think, ever talked of that. Am I incorrect on that, Lance?
Yeah, he brings it up at the beginning of the movie. He's talking to Pam there on their date as if that's something. And, apparently, there was Doris's brother died at 14, right before David was born. His name was Eugene David. He had a brain tumor. So then David was born and they named him David. There was something there, and they acted like Doris's family had a bunch of tragedies in the past, but you didn't hear Von Erich curse until, newspapers after a couple of deaths, after Mike got sick, something was going on, what's going on.
Yeah, I think this was another case. Sorry.
No.
I think it was another case where they're really focusing on David and what he's thinking. And I don't know, in real life, did David, did he feel that way early?
You mean Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. Yeah, you're right. So Kevin, was he feeling that way early? I don't know, just maybe in his head, because they did have that one scene where he was on the boat, and it's just like this in his head, he's seeing his brothers again or whatever, So I really felt this movie was really, even the scenes where they showed something actually being said may have been just, they were portraying his thought process through actions that may not have actually happened.
Well, I don't think it ate him up to the point that he wasn't going home and that he was going to make sure that the kid's name wasn't Von Erich on the birth certificate. It was Gatkinson. I mean, I'm sure it screwed with his head, but I don't think it was. I mean, his wife's been with him for 40 years, and I think I think that her. I don't think that they portrayed her as being a bigger rock, through the whole thing for him.
Yeah, she was. That's the secret to him, is he had them so early on. I'm not sure if I came out of that going, was that a shotgun wedding, really? But when they got married compared to when the first child was born, which were girls, of course, the boys are not in their 40s like the movie made it out and stuff. Ross and Marshall are mid 30s and everything. One of them wasn't even born until Kevin was out of the limelight. But they, the curse, let's talk about that a second. There were a lot of things that weren't in this movie, besides Chris. People keep talking about Chris. David had been married, had lost a baby at 13 weeks, an infant, and that's 45 years ago tomorrow that baby died. And he got divorced. He remarried and was married to that lady, I can't think of her name right now. But there it is. They were married till he died. Mike was married when he died. The fact that Carrie left 2 daughters, that's such a tragedy and stuff. So besides Chris, there was so much more. And I didn't see a point of adding Chris to the movie. I know a lot of people just keep harping on that on Twitter the last few weeks, and I'm kind of like, it's just more bad. There's a lot of, that guy had a lot of issues behind the scenes. Chris did a lot of, mad about his health and things like that. I listened to an interview with Ross and Marshall, Kevin's sons, and their sister. And the sister remembers being in the sportatorium with Kamala, right there. Remembers a lot of things. And she said, I knew Chris well, but others just, they had trouble getting along with him. And so I just think, well, it's okay. They didn't put it in. And they did mesh the two deaths together. Carrie's death and Chris's death was kind of meshed together into one death scene.
And they didn't mention Fritz's either at the end there, which they could have thrown that in as well.
No, they just left it with the cracks in the foundation that she wasn't fixing dinner anymore. And she's over here doing that. Of course. Yeah.
I love how they portrayed a woman not making some guy dinner that's grounds for suicide. But whatever.
Well, Fritz didn't. Fritz died of brain cancer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, but
and he got real bad before he died. I've seen Kevin talk about that every time he saw Kevin, it just sent him off the rails because all he remembered was all of his kids were dying.
It's, but as far as, I think I heard World Class curse before I ever heard a Von Erich curse. I could be wrong, but I mean, because then you had Gino Hernandez. And I'm gonna circle back to everybody has been saying that the guy that played Carrie wasn't big enough. Talking about the size of the actors. Yeah, but the size of the actors they wrestled were, I mean, it's not like they put them in there against somebody who was actually Terry Gordy's size. So, I mean, everything was proportionate in the ring. So, I mean.
Yeah, we didn't see a lot of the Freebirds, but when we did see them, they looked good. I mean, they were pretty close, in my opinion.
The guy in the headgear playing Buddy?
Yeah.
I think, Bradley Pierce played Michael Hayes. I think he did a great job. I mean, for what I saw, I'm hoping that when this movie comes out on DVD or Blu-ray, that the deleted scenes will be back in, because I did notice, like, we knew MJF was playing Lance Von Erich, and you saw him, and he wouldn't tag Kevin. But I mean, if you know that there's more there, but they didn't address it, and so I know there's more story to be told. There's probably more scenes that'll make sense because there was lots of story on the cutting room floor.
And you never heard that about Lance showboating Kevin up. I don't know where that came from. We know Kevin didn't like the idea of Lance, but you never hear that about Lance. You never hear, those negative things about him. And he was cheered from day one to the last day he wrestled for World Class. Some people, think he wasn't, or he was a dud. People knew it was a show from day one. It was wrestling. And, people make a bigger deal of that being the fake cousin, and they try to put something over on us. No, it was wrestling. I was right there. It was just part of the show.
Well, I know they did something with with the 6-man from Texas Stadium. I saw a picture of Zac Efron with the busted finger, the white jeans, and the blood on his face.
Is that right? Wow, that's pretty wild.
I saw a picture, so I know there's got to be something around.
Yeah, side by side. But I mean, this movie couldn't go 8 hours.
Yeah.
No, but I'd like to see that.
But I'm hoping that the immense popularity of this movie, and especially if it gets Oscar buzz, that somebody will go and decide maybe we can tell this story in a miniseries or an ongoing series, on some streaming platform. I think it's tremendous. I mean, there's so much. The characters are so good. I mean, not about the movie, just the actual real life characters that you could dig into. Because I mean, just think once Carrie loses his foot, how he had to deal with it. He's dealing with the pain. He's dealing with probably feeling less than, because prosthetics weren't them what they are now. I mean, the fact that he was able to function as well as he did and at the level he did is incredible. But
Yeah, I did like the scene where they're training after it happened and they're in the ring and he's trying to lock up and he just couldn't even do it because it hurt so bad and he fell down. And Kevin's like, "Oh, we can't do this," and he's like, "No, let's do it again. Let's do it again." So I mean, I think they didn't have a lot of time. They had to cut out so much they couldn't really tell that slowly and really give it the attention it should have, kind of like you said. But I think that scene did a lot to show he went from that point to being able to, me as a kid, I didn't know he didn't have a foot. I was watching WWF, and this was just Kerry Von Erich's in WWF now. I had no clue that it happened.
Yeah, what's amazing is he loses that foot in June of '86. Or I'm sorry, he has the wreck in June of '86. He still has the foot the rest of '86. They go into Christmas night at Reunion Arena. He seconds Mike and Kevin at Reunion Arena. He shakes the ropes to make Brian Adias fall. And he gets in the ring after he's done that to cheer with him, and he's limping. He hurt his foot shaking the ropes on it. You can see. And a month later, he has the match, the return match, February of '87, with Brian Adias. And it's during that match that the foot is, it just wouldn't heal, basically, is what the situation was. It was just too withered from it. And he goes in there with Brian Adias, and Brian's pretty level-headed talking about it. If you listen to Brian's shoot interview, it's really, as I said, level-headed. He says, he tells him, it's broke, it's hurt. And I believe right there, he loses the foot after that match. Because he's on crutches whenever you see when Mike dies, he's on crutches at when they're looking for Mike, because it took 4 days actually to find Mike. But by May, so he loses the foot in February. By May, he's walking around Texas Stadium without crutches. And then he's wrestling about October. He starts doing workout matches at shows, at special attraction. Then he's full-time at Thanksgiving and immediately goes to Japan. That is so quick from the time he loses his foot, basically February, to October. And he's able to do what he could do. And it's amazing to watch. If you watch how he used it as a wedge or how he got up, he was slower, but he still kept, he still jumped off the apron, did all kinds of things. Obviously in real life, he had a bigger boot, that leg went down into. And when I was, there at the Sportatorium front row all the time, I thought he had a brace around the foot inside the boot. I didn't know what the deal was, but every time he jumped on that wooden floor in front of me, I could hear this metal hit. And then the rumor came out about the match in Nevada with Colonel De Beers, where he lost the foot and he rolled under the ring. And that made it to the Sportatorium. It just, people kind of, weren't sure about it at that time of in the '88. You just didn't know. Is that real? People saying that. And we never thought anything of it, because here he is every single week against Lawler in '88, '89.
Yeah. I mean, we would have never suspected it was gone. Maybe braced, but not gone.
Right.
And I said I didn't like how Kerry was portrayed, and I'm gonna tell you why. Is when he comes home for Christmas. For one, I don't like that there was no mention of wife and kids. He shows up for Christmas and he's got a woman in tow, and he's, I don't believe that he got time off and was going to go hang out with her in Mexico instead of spending time with the family. I don't believe that he cussed his dad out. I don't believe that his dad would have stood there and took that crap from him being talked to that way. He came home and he kind of like, this is, I don't want to disparage the lady, but she's real pretty, but it's kind of like, hey, I'm taking her to Mexico. We're going to go have fun for Christmas. And then, he lets Kevin know that he's not, WWE's not redoing his contract. And then he feels that's when it led to a suicide. But I think there was so much that his addiction to pain pills, there was so much more that contributed to his ultimate demise. That if they'd have put it in a movie, for one, I think would have made for a better story with Kerry. I think that could have been a huge focus, because I was watching one of the WWE syndicated shows, and they used to, right before they'd go to commercial, they'd have a WWE superstar introduce themselves and talk about what they do in their free time. And he's like, "Hey, I'm the Texas Tornado from Denton County, Texas. And in my free time, I'm learning to read and write in Latin." And I looked at my wife and I said, "Don't they write prescriptions in Latin?" And we had a little laugh about it. But it wasn't 2 months later, he got busted for forging prescriptions.
That's funny.
So his possession charges and getting arrested for forging prescriptions, he was going to get some jail time.
Jail.
He was going to prison. And that led, that on top of the pain. I think if he could have embraced what had happened to him, he could have been an inspiration for so many people. And WWE probably could have took that and made so much more out of it. But instead they chose to keep it a secret. And I would have liked to see more depth to Kerry, because it's like he just came home from the Olympics. "Kerry, we want you to wrestle." "Okay."
Yeah, the dumb jock. That's, they kept it right at that level. They didn't say, "Oh, they could have shown him with a camera." We actually know Kerry liked taking pictures. We know he did like photography, and had a real life, but they played it so one-dimensional on this. Yeah.
Oh, and having a family that his wife was leaving him and taking the kids. So
let's say this: at the end of '87, when he was coming back, all of summer of '87, he started doing TV commercials around here for different Chevrolet dealership, for a radio station. Kathy's with him at a lot of stuff. You see her for the first time at a lot of stuff by his side, his wife, and when he returns, he's a monster. He's so huge compared to any time in his career, and he's really clear-headed, if you will, on interviews and things like that. And I don't know where it went downhill, but if you were talking about a TV miniseries that needed to show lots of different things, their family would be it. It would be pretty wild to see that she was supporting him so much by his side. He's really clear, and then it goes downhill to what it became in the WWF. And of course, that was a few years later, because he wrestled still in Dallas, after that. He had a long time, 88, 89, finally middle of 90, he goes WWF. He was here a long time before the WWF.
And he was completely on board with, you couldn't tell by Kerry that he wasn't on board with USWA.
Oh, right.
My God, he lost clean to Taurus. Well, he lost with the claw in the middle of the ring to Taurus Bulba.
There was interference.
Yes.
In the match. Okay. Early in the match, there's interference.
And then Taurus Bulba said, Bulba said, "It's not going to ever get any better than this. I'm out of here, guys. I'm retiring."
Didn't Kerry reconcile just a couple days before he killed himself, and it didn't go very well?
With Kathy, he tried to, and she wouldn't take him back.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. So there was a lot going on right before it happened.
This man hit rock bottom.
He was so bad off, they wouldn't let Kristen, his niece, she had the same birthday, and they, so they were really close, and they wouldn't let her ride with him anymore in the car or be around him. It was so bad. They had to keep her away. She said that on a podcast 2 years ago.
And Holly posted a picture right after the movie came out of Kerry and Kevin and all the kids. Kevin's kids, Kerry's kids. And she said, now that the movie's out, I just want to show y'all that, hey, it wasn't that bad. We were a happy family. I don't believe they lived in apartments. I don't believe they only had one bathroom, but that was funny.
The one bathroom. Yeah.
I don't think Kevin popped his cherry in the truck.
All I can think of when they did that, this is how uncomfortable it made me. All I could think about was he had to watch this with Ross and Marshall.
Man, and Pam. And Pam is such a gentle soul, y'all. Just a good person. I don't know what she was like in her teenage years, but Man, you know, I loved Lily James in this, but I don't know that she was playing Pam Von Erich.
Yeah, I mean, I loved her in the movie, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Kevin has told. I'm not going to repeat the full story, but Kevin has told a story about that. Wasn't. I mean, he didn't lose it in a pickup truck with his wife. He told the story at an autograph show, and it was facilitated by a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. So, you know what I'm talking about, Lance?
Yeah, I think I was there.
I'm not. I haven't heard the story. I hadn't heard the story since 2005, so I'm not going to repeat it now. But trust me, Kevin has a fun losing it story.
Yeah, and of course they didn't meet at the front of the sportatorium where everybody's standing out there signing autographs. Give me a break. You know, I believe she was in Carrie's class, and she would hang out at practices, you know, their football or whatever practices, and that's the deal. She certainly didn't. That killed me because I was out there in that crowd many a time, and he wasn't dating those. Picking up. I mean, they might have picked up some girls there, but usually those weren't the ones they were picking up. You know.
Yeah.
That was the
in my mind, it was like Elvis Presley. They were telling the security guys, "We want that one and that one and that one."
Well, I don't exactly remember the park benches out in front of the sportatorium, everybody hanging out. Like that's not part of town I remember being in.
No, I remember getting out of my car and getting the hell in the building as quick as I possibly could.
Exactly. And of course, they were going in the back side, the wrong side of the sportatorium, weren't they, Dave? We know that they were at the entrance was at the other end, and that only wrestlers went in at the end that they were showing. Yeah. Stuff.
I want to take a minute to acknowledge our chat. We have our live audience that's rolling with us tonight. Coach Keith Morrison, Coach Keith. Words are hard. Coach Keith Morrison, Andrew Hermes, Willie Buck. What's up, Willie Buck? Josh Rosenbaum popped in. T-Weave was actually, he's normally in the chat quicker than he was in the green room.
Well,
Matt Presley's here. Amy Vaughn popped into the chat.
Who's she?
Yeah. She ain't here is who she is.
We had Coach Rosenbaum, we had Willie Buck. So thank you all for jumping in there and participating in our chat here with us.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all coming tonight. Let's talk about the deaths that were handled in this movie. Hey, Ike, I'm gonna go around the horn. Which Von Erich death hit you the hardest?
I'd say Carrie. I was young when David died, so I don't think I really caught on. But I was old enough and had seen enough of Carrie that I think Carrie bothered me the most.
Did you have any kind of feeling about how it was handled in the movie?
Knowing the story, I mean, I know he wasn't right outside of the house. In the size Carrie was when he died, there's no way you're picking him up and carrying him to a kitchen table as easy as that. I mean, but it's one of those things where you think back and there's some things that could have been caught, you know, some telltale signs out there, and you can't help but hurt and think they could have been avoided. But he was so ashamed of himself by that point, and if he didn't do it that day, he was going to find a way. But kind of like the Mike deal.
Yeah. T-Weave, did you didn't? You came. It was all over with by the time you got there, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I didn't even know when I was a kid how old the matches I was watching of them were, because I was just discovering them after the fact. I will say this though about like some of the storyline and the deaths and that kind of thing. Sometimes in this movie, and I thought it was a great movie, like we've said, I had a hard time understanding, is what's happening now the next day, or is this 6 months later? I had no idea.
Yes.
And it's like Carrie's death, and then there's like another scene, and I'm like, is Fritz walking in and he's still laying on the table, or is this a year after that? And it was hard to tell sometimes.
What about you, Lance? Which one hit you the hardest?
Well, I think everybody would say Carrie. It was tough. That was because you'd been through it so much with the others, but Carrie represented a lot of our fandom. I really think he did. Yeah, of course, I was young with David, and the younger you are, I think sometimes the less impactful. The older we get, when life is more precious. When you're young, it's different. Um, you know, I had mono. I was home at my parents' house from SMU because I had mono the day that, it happened. So I know when it happened. That tells you right there. I remember coming out of the lunchroom in high school, a few years before that, when they said they had found Mike's body, because that took 4 days, as I said, to find Mike's body. But it was, it was Carrie, obviously. Just, he represented everything I wanted to be. The image of Carrie, you know what I mean? The coolest guy. I always thought of the brothers as the coolest guys at the YMCA. That's the way I looked at these guys. Like, I don't have brothers, but they would be the coolest brothers in the world. I'll say it, I'm not hiding that, right? Okay, Carrie Von Erich, coolest guy in the world. As far as the image, lifting weights, everything looked like $1 million. And, all the girls that I drove down the sportatorium so that they could see, they wanted to see Kevin and Carrie. They're coolest guys can be. So it was Carrie. All my fandom was wrapped up in him. I appreciate Kevin a lot more as I got older, and I've watched over the last few years on the shows I do with Mike Mills on Booking the Territory. I appreciate Kevin so much more now that I'm older, because I see what he was able to do with his body. The athleticism is amazing. But yeah, definitely Carrie, definitely. But I'll say this, for World Class, it was the combination of Gino's death and Carrie's wreck that killed the promotion and stuff. And when they show Mike hurting his shoulder and they pan out, you're supposed to realize that the crowd is down to nothing. And they don't, you don't understand, you had to catch that on the second one. Maybe they pan out that he's done this drop kick, he's shoulder, they're taking care of him, but there's only 2 or 3 rows of fans instead of the whole huge place. They don't explain that well enough, that crowds were dropping through the years with the deaths.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I thought they were in Israel.
No. And what they did is, when he did that, and, they pan out and the crowd's not there. But see, Mike, that happened in the middle of the heyday. Certainly wasn't at the end. The crowds were still there. Mike has this shoulder surgery. He goes to Israel. He actually came back from Israel, and he's going to have shoulder surgery. They do a beat down in Fort Worth that's never shown. I guess not to get heat on Gino and Chris, who beat him down. He does have a match after Israel, and that's never talked about, the fact that he was here. He goes and has that shoulder surgery. It's a week later when he gets the infection. In the movie, it's all put together. There's the one doctor. That's doctors, but it's actually 2. There was this famous Dr. Cotton in Dallas who did the shoulder, and then Dr. Sucker, who would be on TV for lots of episodes, be at front row. He is the one that actually, saved Mike when Mike had toxic shock. One of the things in the movie that they didn't get right, though, the night that Mike was sick, that was a huge deal. And they were all down there at Baylor Hospital, everyone, and they were literally on their knees praying. And you hear the stories through the years. They're very consistent. And in the movie, it looked like it was just Kevin and Fritz there at the hospital, but no, it was a big deal. And, his kidneys were shutting down. I believe when that happens, they raised the blood pressure, and the kidneys did come back on, and that kind of turned things around. Dr. Sucker, retired just a few years ago, about 10 years ago and stuff. I knew an infectious disease doctor down there, and I got to ask about him. And funny, I had been around him a bunch, but he looked so different in his old age. I worked out at a gym connected to Baylor Hospital and didn't even recognize him. And I never got to meet him or anything, because I didn't know it was him until he was gone. But it was 2 different doctors. They did go legal action to the doctor that did the shoulder surgery, and I think they settled with him. I've got a couple of newspaper clippings.
That was the Landry Center?
Yeah, the Landry Center. He would work out there. A buddy of mine trained him there. And they just changed that, by the way, to a
Landry Center anymore.
Yeah, Cowboys Fitness and stuff, which is a chain around here.
My plastic surgeon's office was there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I lived in there for years and stuff. A great place. But anyways, Mike's problem was during the middle of the heyday. it was not at the end. They were still, we hadn't even had that hair match, which was another 6 or 7 months. And that's kind of the end of the heyday. It wasn't the end of everything, but if you look at the big time, things start at the cage match and they end at the hair match in 85 and stuff. That's when they brought Mike out in the car. See, they could have done that. They could have brought Mike out in the car like they did at the Cotton Bowl and paraded him around, which I never thought was too bad. It was bad because the fans wanted to see them and they wanted the fans to be that family. Family was the whole theme of it, of World Class. Even the Freebirds called each other brothers. It was a family versus family type of deal. And I thought they could have done that with Mike, because that a lot of people don't like how they paraded him out there on that Porsche that day, and I never had a problem with it.
He wanted to see people. He wanted people to see him, and I mean, we were all legitimately worried about the guy. I mean, we were legitimately see him, just see him out and about, because I mean, Mike was never out there. I mean, you never heard him really talk other than at the shows, or so I mean, we were there. We generally wanted to see the guy.
Absolutely. And at the funeral, like David's funeral, they wanted the fans there at Grove Hill in Dallas, and the fans were there. And so, they tried to give back to the fans in that regard.
Really Nikki, were the Von Erichs on your radar when you weren't? But
no, I didn't really. I would catch probably on Saturday or whenever it was, watching something happening. But no, it was not even on my radar.
She was cool kids.
What about you, Justin?
For me, Kerry was, affected me. I knew him as a kid as the Texas Tornado, so that was my first exposure to the Von Erichs. Him dying, was the roughest on me because it was the only one I knew about at the time. Going back and looking at it now, I think David's death was the most monumental of them all. I think if David doesn't die, I think a lot of things change, and I mean a lot of things change. So I think that would be the butterfly effect that I would like to take back out of the three of them if I could.
Yeah, David's is the one that hit me. David was my favorite. 1983 is my favorite year of professional wrestling, and David Von Erich was all over 83, from his battles with Jimmy Garvin to transitioning to chasing Flair. He had the match at Christmas with Flair, where David Manning wouldn't disqualify him for throwing him over the rope, but then eventually had to disqualify him for hitting him with the mic. Then we went into Mike going 10 minutes with Flair to set up the stipulations that David never got to have at Texas Stadium. So David hit me hard. I skipped school, went to his funeral. I actually got in the balcony at the church.
And Dave dove into the coffin and stole those tights that are up on the wall up there behind him. That's how he got this.
Well, I got a question about David's death. There was that scene in the bathroom. Y'all think that's completely made up? Was there any indication that there was knowledge of anything before he traveled? Or
that's a good question. I wondered that too, Terry.
I think it coincides with Kevin's story that David didn't feel good.
Okay.
But he had to go to Japan. I think all the deaths that they portrayed in the movies, I think the events leading up to them were fairly accurate. I mean, David didn't feel good. He was sick, went to Japan and died. That Mike left a suicide note, went and took the sleeping pills, got in a sleeping bag by the lake. Kerry, the same thing. And then with even Chris, for me, David hit me. David hit me hard. My hero died. When Mike died, I cut Mike some slack because I felt bad for Mike, because I don't know what toxic shock did to him. I know his brain was fried. I don't know how bad that disease ravaged him. When Kerry did it, I was mad. I was mad that Kerry did it, and probably because I had just become a father. I had 2 girls by that point, how could a father do that to his kids? It made me mad. I felt like it was cowardly.
Yeah, that's what the judge in the newspaper, one of the judges, his judge that was gonna doing that, his deal said he took the coward's way out and stuff. And I know it killed me at the time when they said that. I was, oh man.
It at the time that it did that, that's how I felt. Now, as an older man, I feel bad for him because it's all the things that led up to that. The man hit rock bottom. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, he fought those demons. It was a sickness.
I think the question that arises out of Terry's question, though, about David and the bathroom scene is, I don't even care if there was a bathroom scene, but did David, as going back to what you said, David, he knew he was sick. Could he have could his life have been saved if he would have went to the doctor and got himself thoroughly checked out?
Probably.
And did he know he was that sick to go do that? Or did he just think, oh, it's a stomach bug?
He probably didn't, but I mean, we can't kick him for that because
no, I'm not. I'm just,
I mean, how many
wondering.
of us are sick for 2 weeks before we go to the doctor?
Yeah.
I mean, ask my brother. I would have never missed work. I worked sick. Wouldn't have felt any better at home.
Well, and it coincided with him, traveling a lot more and working a lot more and just putting his body through a lot. So, there was thought process that I've just been putting my body through a lot and I just need to.
I have a feeling if you have
Absolutely.
what he had to, flying probably isn't going to help that situation at all.
Probably
and
not.
He was zigzagging between here and St. Louis constantly. He really was having this feud with Kamala here, and then in Missouri he's doing that with Flair and Race, kind of a triangle feud. So he's going back and forth, and of course the Freebird matches always, are in Dallas. Besides his main thing, they would always have one main feud going, kind of like Garvin and David, while still David was fighting the Freebirds and things like that. I want to talk about a quote that they didn't use in the movie, and I do believe this movie was based on several of Kevin's quotes. I mean, I think a lot of people could have written this movie because we know Kevin did say the thing about favoritism. He did say, other quotes that are in the movie, but he told David, "Don't you go to Japan and die on me." And he said that, and they didn't put it in the movie. And I think that's pretty powerful. That they didn't put it in there. I don't know why. And I do know why. This guy that wrote it was from the UK. He didn't grow up like us watching it. He doesn't have no way he has a feel for it like us. And of course, he, as David Manning said, he didn't talk to David Manning or Kevin about it.
Well, and yeah, I mean, his first exposure seeing him was probably on ESPN, and a lot of his information his exposure to them was through wrestling magazines. So
through the documentaries too. I mean, I felt like a lot of the documentaries, a lot of the information that was in the movie, I felt like I saw that on a documentary. So, I mean, I'm sure he did a lot of his research watching all of those. But yeah.
I want to address this one. Andrew Hermey's question, wasn't it speculated that he had overdosed? I mean, over the years, people have said that, you have people say that Bruiser Brody went into the room and flushed the drugs. I'm not saying that David was a choir boy. He was probably drinking. He probably was partying. While Bill Urban was there, he said that David was sick. He was throwing up. So, he said that maybe Dave laid down and purged. And maybe he didn't wake up from that. Maybe he choked in his sleep. But the autopsy said acute enteritis of the lower intestine. And this was at a time that the government of Japan put Paul McCartney in jail for marijuana. He's a Beatle. So the government of Japan is not covering up for a wrestler if they'd lock up a freaking Beatle for marijuana. So I don't care how much they love wrestling over there. They didn't cover for a wrestler. I believe, and it may be, call me a mark, call me a fanboying out because he was my favorite. I believe David died of what he died of. Now, do I believe that David was doing stuff too? Yeah, I'm not stupid. I mean, I met David the week before he went because I got to go in the back at the sportatorium, and the Texas State Athletic Commissioner shopped in our grocery store, and he told us he'd get us in. And I went down there, and I was standing outside that door, and David Manning pulled up. I think he was driving a Grand Marquis, is what I remember, and had Ric Flair in the car with him. He had picked up Ric Flair and brought him to the sportatorium. The commissioner got there. I got to go in the back. I was standing up against the wall. David came in carrying a bottle of wild turkey, shook my hand, said, "How are you?" And he went off into another room. And then I got turned loose to go sit. Ike, did you go with me that night? You're muted.
No, I wasn't. I get more pissed every time you tell the story.
Oh, and it just turned out that particular night that David was. They said that David was. The NWA had ordered Michael Hayes to defend the All Asian title, the international title. As they call it, the All Asian. That he was ordered to defend it against David, and David beat him with the Iron Claw and took that belt to Japan with him.
Yeah, because they weren't going to Japan without a belt. That's a Von Erich rule #1, by the way. Always take a belt to Japan, either Missouri belt, tag belt. Anytime they had a American title, they were going to Japan. Not with. They always were going to go to Japan with a belt.
It was still a big deal in 2007, 2008. The Texas Heavyweight Championship still meant something in Japan because David Marquez called me asking me if I had a Texas belt because Ken that promoted NWA Southwest. Ken Taylor.
Yeah,
his Texas belt was crap and they didn't want to send it to Japan.
That's exactly right.
And because then Mike DiBiase was the champion, and he wanted a belt to take over to Japan with him. So anyway, we got off on a sidebar about David, but I felt like the deaths were well handled in the movie. I'm gonna play another clip. I want to play another clip from Amy because it's about Fritz.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the character Fritz von Erich. First off, the actor who portrayed him deserves an Oscar nomination. I think he was absolutely phenomenal in that role. I think that I don't think Fritz is a bad guy. I think that he's a driven man who had sons who he saw his legacy moving through with the NWA title, the promotion. Again, I don't think that is any different than any dad that, played football and, his son has talent. So he obviously, dreams about his son and pushes him to go into the NFL or, something to that effect. I don't feel like he came off as a bad guy. The boys are very loving to each other. So even though we don't really see a lot of love, like affection coming from the mom and dad, the boys are very much, affectionate with each other and enjoy each other. And so I don't know, but I don't feel like Fritz comes off as a bad guy. I think he, like I said, is like many dads, parents out there that push their kids who see that they can accomplish great things and, is an extension of them and something that they weren't able to accomplish, they want to see, kind of like the NWA title. So that's just my thoughts on Fritz.
I don't like how Fritz was portrayed in this. I kind of felt like, well, just to sum up how Fritz was portrayed in the movie to me, when Doris said that she wasn't cooking, I wasn't sure Fritz wasn't fixing to whip her ass.
They had built him up that bad, right?
I would have popped if he would have hit her with the Iron Claw right there in the middle of the kitchen.
Good one.
I mean, I was concerned because I never I think Fritz worshipped his wife. But at that point of the movie, with all the other creative license that had gone on, I wasn't sure that wasn't going to happen. And I was glad that it didn't. And he just kind of sat down. He got it, and when he sat down in that chair when she's painting, you know, she eventually leaves him.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that maybe they could have got to that point of the movie.
They kind of pushed themselves into a corner, I think, the way they kept the wrestling so kayfabe. Because it was always, let's get Mike back in the ring. He's got to be a champion. We're going to do this. But they didn't really show the not kayfabe side, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, when Fritz retired and he did an interview right there ringside, and that's when he said all these boys are going to be NWA champions. But he had also said that at the NWA conventions. I think that, you know, he's a Texas redneck. You know, we had stores 3 miles apart. We saw those same kind of guys all the time, Dave. You know, people, Texas rednecks, and how they act. And this was a successful one that wanted the kids to go into the successful family business. I mean, that's pretty common in the 60s and 70s that a parent, you know, kind of pushing your dad into whatever business because, hey, it's a good living. And, you know, we don't know. Hey, we don't know what these boys' future actually would have been in the real world. We don't know. I mean, their athleticism probably wasn't going to get them pro or anything. I believe that Kevin loved football enough, and the knee story that they used may have been true. I don't think Kerry was going to the Olympic trials, but anyways, I don't think his throws were that good in the nation and stuff. And there's a wrestler in Japan that also uses that same excuse about, they boycotted. I couldn't go to the Olympics, but that guy actually did go to the other Olympics.
I like how they blamed Olive Carey not going to the Olympics on Jimmy Carter. I was like, well, I don't know if that's really.
And they harped on that from 80, 82, 83. It was a big deal. It faded away over the years. They didn't mention it, but damn straight, that was, you know, they had boycotted the Olympics and that had screwed him up.
And Kerry was already wrestling. He was already wrestling, but they were saying that he wasn't getting paid so he could keep his amateur status.
Yeah.
This might fit into what you're saying, Dave, and I don't know, because I watch it and I'm not sure which parts are real and which are made up. But there was that scene when Fritz is in the ring with the boys, and he says, "Kevin's gonna get." No, he said, okay, so Kevin had been the guy that was going to get the son that was going to get the NWA championship, and then he says, David, it just out of nowhere, it seemed. He said, David's going to get the NWA championship. And Kevin's standing there, and it's like it just hit him like a ton of bricks out of nowhere. Is that something that would have come from Fritz, or was this the NWA originated that and picked him?
No, Kevin was still playing football, and David was wrestling. David went on the road. I mean, Fritz even said, hey, Dave, we're going to send you on the movie. We're going to send you on the road. So that's when he went to Florida. He went to Florida and did his rule breaking stint.
So they got the whole timeline screwed up there. So there wasn't even an opportunity.
You know, the idea was that Kevin was the golden boy, but he wasn't doing very well on the promos. They established that he couldn't do it in one take, and David was screwing with him.
Right.
And then when David took the mic and saved him, I mean, and if you go back and watch World Class Wrestling, Kevin wasn't a great promo. None of them. I mean, David was a pretty good promo.
But they weren't starting over the promos. They did, you know, Kevin wrestled for years and years on that Channel 11 show. They weren't pre-taping those interviews. They were doing them pretty live there. And so, you know, I know that his style of interview was different, but it wasn't as bad as it was portrayed in the movie.
And they did them at ringside.
Yeah. You know, the fact is each boy had his turn at main eventing against the champion. You know, Kerry did, Kevin did, David did, you know, and they had already gone to Japan. Kevin and David had been to Japan before David's trip back. Like, oh, he's going to Japan for the first time. Got to make it over there. They had already been over there when they were really young, you know, a couple of times. And so, you know, that's, you know, it's just part of the movie. And, you know, I don't don't believe that really happened with, him picking him over. They knew, well, David's had a couple of chances. He lost, so now it's Kevin's turn. It just depended on, what season it was. We'd had Kerry so much during 82, then the cage match. Then it was time for Kevin to have a couple of big matches that he had one at the Sportatorium. Then he had the big one, April 1st at the Coliseum that's on the network. Then he was going against Flair in June, and it ended up being Race. And then it was time for David at the end of the year to get his little run and stuff. So, they moved it around constantly. And plus, the boys, were getting married. Kerry got married right after that June of 83 show, but they're having babies. They're settled here. I don't know how bad they really wanted to travel. I've always said that. I don't know how bad they really wanted that belt and wanted to travel.
I have a thought on Amy's question about Fritz, on how his character or how he was portrayed in this movie. I think this movie is about the bond of brothers and their relationship. And so I think every movie needs an antagonist. And I really think that they chose Fritz to fill that role. However true, some of these scenes may be, I think they just needed something for the brothers to fight against in this movie, and I think Fritz was kind of chosen to fill that need a little bit. Now, I will say, I also want to say, Holt McElhenney, who I love from Mindhunter on Netflix, he was fantastic in that. I thought the two best characters in this movie were Fritz and Mike's character. I thought you were kind of drawn to them always throughout this movie.
Yeah. I think that, the kid that played Mike, I think he showed such a different side that we were used to seeing of Mike. And I think he did a great job playing him after he'd had the high fever.
I wanted to talking about the movie and Fritz saying that, and that's just kind of Hollywood right there. But Hollywood was definitely the mom sitting at home watching Kerry win the world title. And we know that was on Mother's Day, and they presented her with flowers before the show in front of the whole, and several of those Texas stadiums were on Mother's Day. And, they presented her with the flowers, and she was there and stuff. And they played it like she was sitting there with the ghost of David, on the stairs and stuff. Actually, the first time I saw it, I thought it was supposed to be Mike sitting there. And I thought, well, Mike was definitely on that show, but Mills corrected me and he said, no, that was a ghost. And I saw it last night, how it was a ghost. You can't catch everything on the first viewing.
Yeah. So overall on a scale, we're going to use the Pondwater jars scale. Terry, out of 5 jars, how do you rank Iron Claw?
I think I give it a 4 because I really enjoyed it. I understand the need for change to fit into a movie, but I think some of the stuff that changed, I don't think that was a good enough excuse for it. I think there was opportunities to explain some stuff better. And like I said, the timeline kind of jumped a lot. Even me being an outsider knowing that and not being able to tell, if it's the next day or a year later or something, I think something was missing there for me. So that kind of took one of the jars away. But I gave it 4. I loved it. I'd watch it again. I missed a few things apparently, so I do need to watch it again.
Ike. Well, Ike said he's not going to rate it. He left. And I just want y'all to know, in the shower and somebody waiting on the bathroom, I would be the one knocking on the door.
That's right off the bat.
Let's just leave that there. I don't want to ruin that for anybody.
That's funny stuff.
That's like the first thing.
Ike was 13, damn it. He was going through some things in that bathroom back there.
There he is. He's back.
What did I miss? How the internet goes out and people are talking about my Peter.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just said that in the shower scene, that would have been you in the shower and me knocking on the door.
Oh, you.
He's froze up.
He froze up again. Okay, I'll go ahead and give my jar rating while we're waiting on him.
Go ahead.
I'll give this 3 and a slurp.
Oh,
And the reason why is I think they told the wrong story. I think the antagonist should have been more of the drugs and the stuff that kind of, even the mental depression, more than fighting against Fritz per se. So I think that they kind of told the wrong story in the movie. I think I like you guys had the same issues with the timeline, and even though I wasn't there and didn't grow up in the time period, I've been with Dave long enough and watched enough of it to know when most of these things happen and how they happen. And so that did kind of hang me up a little bit, but I went into it knowing that that was going to occur. So to me, I just felt like they could have told a little bit different of a story and it would have been a little bit better for me. So 3 and a slurp, I would
that's
say.
interesting. Lance?
Yeah, I'll go 4 out of 5. That's the rating scale. 5's the best. Yeah, I can go 4 because the most important thing that they got over with the boys was that they genuinely thought, the real boys, that they would see each other in the afterlife. And boom, they actually did it. They showed it in the movie, reuniting in the afterlife. And that is exactly the way the boys thought. They wrote longer suicide notes. Mike had a long suicide note, than in the movie. I mean, he talked about, I think, saying he was an F up or so, but that they would all be together. They said that. We have whoever, Bret Hart talks about Carrie months before, wanting to, talking about, he'd see his brothers and maybe he should just, do it. And Bret Hart had thought he had talked him out of it. I thought it was neat at the beginning. The river scene shows them just partying, sitting. I mean, how great was that scene? They're in inner tubing in that same set of where they show the fantasy scene later, and it's a party, and they just love each other to death. It's just tremendous. You can't think that Fritz was horrible. The fact that they have so much love, and Fritz talked about. The boys talked about Fritz coming over and kissing the boys at a practice, kissing them, something like that, being affectionate with the boys. So, there's some baloney right there. It's just Hollywood making him the hardest ass they can. And they just kept building how bad everything was. And in my head, I'm going, there's one quote that they haven't played in the trailer. It must be the way they end the movie. And it was paraphrasing Kevin's quote of not being a brother anymore. And from there, the boys seeing him cry and the boys saying, no, we're going to be your brother. And then time, I wish they had done more post movie besides just showing that he moved there and that everything was great and he had a huge family. I wish they could have explained it a little more, because as time went on, we've seen Kevin on social media, and it's a good life, except for these brothers dying. He has a fulfilling life. And for people that don't know that, they're just like, well, okay, these boys are telling him it's going to be okay. And he's crying in his yard, but we know that he moved on past it. In a certain way. Of course, he didn't move past it, that way, but other things came up in his life, and he has this fulfilling life with all these grandkids, and it looks fantastic. And they just showed that one picture of all of them together, and I thought there could have been more. I thought there could have been more pictures over the credits, real pictures. There's plenty of social media people out there that have lots of pictures they could have used. Oh, by the way, last thing. Mike in the ring, they showed Mike doing those drop kicks. They played it as if he was very capable in the ring. I like that, because Mike was. There's a lot of people out there that say he was too small, this and that about Mike. Mike was fine. Mike had some of the best teachers ever, as he was married to Buddy Roberts for months at a time, Gino months at a time, and Jake the Snake. And, he was very capable. And a lot of people will put Mike down on wrestling, or he shouldn't have been there. Mike was all right.
Before you crap out again.
I'd go 4 out of 5. I can't say I really knew how to feel after the movie. And that's probably because these are my childhood heroes. And, you know how the story's going to go, and you know, am I supposed to leave there feeling good? The first thing I did when I left, I texted Dave. It's like, hey, as soon as you see the movie, call me. And but I loved how it told the story about the brothers. I mean, I think that's the main focus of the movie. And really digging in on, I got goosebumps just about every other scene. I mean, you know, you see them in the ring, stuff like that. And I'm remembering my childhood, things along those lines, where there definitely timeline issues that could have been cleaned up just a little bit. Absolutely. But in all, it was a good movie. I do agree they did a good job with Mike Brown and Erich in the ring. I found a whole lot of world class I've been watching here lately since seeing the movie. And going back and watching Mike now, you know, over the years, you're thinking, yeah, he never really had it, but he was actually really good in the ring. A lot better than I think growing up we gave him credit for sure.
I gave this movie a 4 out of 5 as well. But the night I saw it, I probably would have only gave it a 3.
Agreed.
I was like, I came out of there feeling a certain way. It's a story that they told a story that I wasn't really sure that I wanted to hear again.
Yeah. Yeah. We lived
I mean,
it. Yeah.
And the deaths were handled the way they handled the deaths in the movie. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. I was trying not to cry in the movie. I could have done without the gunshot when Carrie died, especially in the movie theater that I saw it in, because the way the speakers were, it went off behind me. So, I mean, it's just, I came out of there feeling, you know, and the way it was wrapped up at the end was beautiful. And if you got kids, it would really get to you. So 4 out of 5, but after a couple of days thinking about it, and you know, it's a solid 4 out of 5 for me. The only things that the negatives I have is I didn't like Fritz. I didn't like the portrayal of Fritz. I didn't like the portrayal of Carrie. The lack of being a family man.
I did get teary-eyed a few times throughout the movie there at the end, and it was kind of a good, heartfelt movie that, like you said, it did wrap it up well at the end. I felt like, you know, with the kids and everything, even though, like Lance said, they should have been 2 little girls running around out there, but after everything else they skipped over, I don't think that's a big deal.
And people were confused. The guy next to me who knows wrestling was confused because the boys had long hair during it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure they
weren't sure. You know, and it was kind of.
I thought the same thing
early on. You know, but they called it Ross early on, and so yeah, that was weird that they would do that. But I guess, you know, it made sense in the end for it to be 2 boys like he had.
Trying to make it that brotherly.
New brothers. Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out to James Beard. James Beard did an incredible job in this movie. I mean, every scene he was in,
he stole it. I kept just looking at him over there, you know, the whole time.
Just a very believable referee. I mean, he's a great referee anyway. I'm just saying that, and I'm hoping that when the Blu-ray comes out, the Blu-ray or whatever, however they do it, director's cut. I'd like to see the stuff that was out, the deleted scenes. Maybe they'll put those back in, because I mean, same thing with Justice League. Justice League was not a great movie, but then when they redid it with and Zack Snyder finished it, the Snyder cut, it was an excellent movie. So I think when you take the things that for time restraints that had to be taken out of the movie and put back in, because it's like I said, we saw MJF, and we knew if you didn't know that MJF was Lance Von Erich, you wouldn't have known MJF was Lance Von Erich. You know, and when I saw MJF, I was looking because I wanted to see Cassidy Riley. I was wanting to catch a glimpse of Cassidy in the movie.
I think it left me with more questions than anything because I'm so literal.
And Stephanie's sitting next to me. I don't know if y'all heard that or not. But she says that the movie left her with more questions, and we watched the Triumph and Tragedy World Class. It's the WWE documentary that had Garvin, Buddy Roberts, Michael Hayes, Gary Hart, Scandal Akbar, Bob Irwin, Kevin.
And if you guys that are listening haven't seen the movie yet, you might want to check that documentary out before you go. It might give you a good
No.
Why?
Watch the documentary after the movie.
Oh, okay.
Watch the documentary before the movie.
It might fill in some.
You're going to pick the movie apart.
Yeah, it might fill in some questions there afterwards.
But like I said, the movie left her with more questions.
I just think throughout the whole movie, the thread was the brotherly connection. And like Terry was saying, in the scene where Kevin's trying to help Carrie, with his foot after his amputation, and when they're all trying to help Mike throughout the whole movie, really, it's just like how much they lean and love each other, I think is really the thread of it. And then how Kevin's the only one left. And, in the end, that is the real story. I mean, they didn't really stray from that. And that's the heart of it.
Yeah.
And if you grew up watching it, you got all the feels when you saw David on the horse with the brown jacket on, and kind of like you were talking about earlier, Carrie with the cutoff T-shirt that he wore everywhere, Kevin in the yellow fishnet shirt, and
David in the football jersey.
Yeah. So I mean, there was a lot of it that I still chilled up every time I saw it. So
and the trunks. I mean, David. I like that they put the black and yellow trunks on David in the movie, even though the word Texas on his ass was way too big. But since I don't know if I've ever told y'all that I own those trunks.
Oh, wow.
Or like Andrew Hermes likes to say, David's underwear.
Well, yeah. Me and Andrew.
Dave would have gave it 5 jars if it wasn't for the Texas on his ass being too.
Andrew and I are both convinced that Dave has sniffed those tights, but he denies it to this day.
Well, I think I was there the day he took them up there to get it put in there. I can or cannot deny the fact he probably put them on his head.
I did not. I never put them on.
Oh, that would be hilarious. You just wearing those tights. Oh my God. That would be the picture of all pictures right there.
I should have put them on.
Hey, if we get 1,000 subscribers.
No, those I paid way too much money to have those.
Just one time. It won't hurt them.
That frame job was not cheap. And I can't get them back out of there without, so no. And I want to thank our subscribers. Thank y'all so much. We're at 282 subscribers. So that's only 18 away from me having to take a cannonball from Vladimir Koloff. So
we need more Koloff.
So, I mean, y'all need to slow down. I enjoy the subscribers, but I don't really think I want to take this cannonball because he's way too excited about giving it to me. So, but we're at 282.
I'm creating 10 new accounts a day, Dave.
Oh.
Terry's son just signed up.
Yeah.
See how they do me? See how they do me, Lance?
I'm ready to see it. Hey, I got to ask you, the guy playing Mercer, what was that? I just felt that was a nothing. They could have gotten somebody with more pizzazz. I understand he's an experienced actor, but I didn't quite get that. And
there was personality.
It was terrible. And there was a Gary Hart character that was sitting in a chair with his back to you that you never saw. I'm not sure if he was ringside during the Brody Gino tag match. He might have been there, but of course they just barely saw it. But you saw a guy sitting in the office at one point talking to Fritz with a bald head, and that was supposed to be him.
Who was it that now that you said that, it kind of reminded me. We were talking about the kayfabe of the matches and all that stuff, but there was one scene where they're about to have a tag team match and they're running through what they're going to do real quick. Who was it that was with them? They were tagging against
Brody and Gino.
Yeah. Brody and Gino. Okay.
Yeah, that never happened.
Speaking of
Yes.
not believable characters, the guy that played Brody did not act like Brody at all. He acted more like Pampiro Firpo
Yeah.
than, I mean, he was like wild and crazy on the bus. And like, if anyone knows anything about Bruiser, like he didn't really do any
Nah.
of that. So
Those two teams did trade the Texas titles in August and September of '78. So if you saw that tag match, that was when they tagged together. Brody would be in and out as always. Gino was, of course, always in, always, apparently in good standing. I always think he's such a good soldier for world class. Just did everything. But they did have that tag. I've seen a lot of people not thinking that the Brody fought the Von Erichs, but he definitely fought Fritz, David, and Kevin. I'm not sure if Kerry and Brody ever had matches against each other, but the others, they certainly did. I've seen tons of pictures, but never one tiny bit of footage of a Von Erich versus Brody. But man, I'd love for somebody to send me that on Twitter.
Lance, do you know anything about Kerry and Jim Hellwig's relationship? I heard today that Jim Hellwig didn't have very many friends, and Bruce Pritchard said this, but he felt like Kerry was one of the few of Jim's friends. Do you know much about that relationship?
I don't. I know Kerry was so likable that, and the lifting the weights, they had that in common. And when Kerry first went up there, they went on, on a house show loop, tag teaming against Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude. They came to Dallas and I went to the show. It was the first time Kerry was back. He just left a month earlier. But no, and they do mention him in there as his old tag team partner Hellwig, and they make it seem like they tagged in world class, which they didn't. Kerry was not wrestling the whole time that Dingo was in Dallas, but they did right there at the beginning, with WWF, and then I think in that Survivor Series match with the Road Warriors and all that. But no, behind the scenes, I don't. We know Roddy Piper like Kerry, and you just always hear good things. He'd give you the shirt off his back, Always
my
good
my
things.
guess is him and Kerry worked out together when they were both working down there in Texas, and then probably when Kerry got to WWE, they just knew each other from then and just kind of kept the relationship
I
going.
can see that they probably hit the gym together.
Yeah.
In Dallas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I heard Bruce say that too. But I mean, Natty Neidhart said that her dad was real fond of Kerry. I mean, you don't hear a lot of people say,
No, never hear anything bad.
I mean, Kerry was so nice that he was a horrible heel.
Well, that's what I was wondering if Lance knew anything, because Kerry must have been super nice if he was going to be friends with Jim Hellwig. So that's what I was like. You can see past a lot of people's bad personality traits.
And I just don't know how much they were together in Dallas, because Kerry was going through trying to get, getting his leg fixed and all that, while Dingo was here and then left in '87. So, I don't know how much they were around each other here. It was a bad period, that '87 in Dallas. '88 came back, and Kerry came back, and the Freebirds came back in and did their Hayes versus Buddy Roberts, while Terry Gordy was basically a face, a tweener and stuff. They, things picked up in '88, and I was super jacked about Lawler coming in to face Kerry. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. I knew the crowds were kind of, it wasn't the heyday, but man, the fact that Lawler was coming in, a legit star that I felt that great about. I was going, wow, this is tremendous. And there I go to their first match, and that's when Lawler had hurt his hand, and he sucker punches Kerry because he can't wrestle because he had broke his hand playing softball. And they don't even have the match. And they have it a couple weeks later, and I couldn't be there.
Well, they brought Lawler in as the AWA champion one night, and Kerry was world-class champion. And I don't even remember who Lawler was wrestling. It wasn't
Terry Taylor.
Was it?
Yeah.
I know that Kerry came to the ring, and Lawler had done nothing to establish himself as a heel.
Right.
And Kerry came to the ring and got in his face and cut a promo. And quite frankly, Kerry was being a dick.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the crowd didn't care. But I went down to ringside, which is probably the first time I'd ever done that at World Class, has gone down there and tried to get an autograph. And Lawler wouldn't do it. But
Yeah,
I
was
mean, I
Terry
was just
Taylor.
excited.
Yeah.
I was excited to see Lawler. I mean, it was a big deal for me that
Yeah.
Lawler came to town. But then when Kerry came down there and got in his face, it was. And in that documentary, they showed the match with him and Lawler, where he had Lawler in the claw, and Lawler. I mean, instead of Marty Miller, instead of counting his shoulders, he was looking at Kerry's head and called for the bell.
Andrew said in the chat, didn't they wrestle at Super Clash? And I believe they did. Isn't that when Kerry gigged his own arm?
Super Clash 3, Andrew. That was what I was just talking about.
Is that when he gigged his arm accidentally and there was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because immediately Lawler takes his arm and throws it on the turnbuckle to try to, cover for him that he was already bleeding. He just scratched his arm, and
he had the thing, the gimmick taped to his finger, and
it's been embellished where, oh yeah, it was this long, and you've heard the stories and stuff, but yeah, he cut the inside of his bicep.
Hey, to time that movie, when Zac Efron was running the ropes, I was pretty impressed because I know that crap hurts.
Yes. Yeah, the Chavo Guerrero, Cassidy Riley. I'm trying to think who the other guy, Luke Hawx. They need to be applauded for training those actors to do what they did. And I realize we only saw short snippets, but they got in there, and I mean, and the talent they worked with. I hate to start naming names and missing somebody. It's just it didn't look hokey at all.
No, but when he throwing Kerry's arm onto the rope to bust it open, made me think of that moment. That I was just really impressed with. I mean, he wasn't just running them; he was attacking the ropes like he should have been, and it's the little bitty details and stuff like that impressed me in the movie.
Well, the movie turned out a lot better when I heard they were doing it. It's like they're doing a movie about the Von Erichs, and Zac Efron's going to be in it, and I was like, Yeah. Well, I don't know about, but then it's the Michael Keaton rule. I didn't think Michael Keaton, Mr. Mom, could be Batman, and he turned out to be a pretty damn good Batman. So I always wait and see. And then when the picture started coming out, I'm like, hey, this might work. And yeah, I'm just so proud that because when wrestling is portrayed on the big screen, I mean, more often it's grunt or no holds barred instead of what we saw here or the wrestler. And there's another wrestling movie coming out soon about women's wrestling. Camille's in it. And
supposedly this Hulk Hogan movie is going to be released in like 2068. I don't know when this is going to happen.
I don't think it's going to be released at all.
Really? Is it dead now? I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it in a while. Last I heard is the strike or whatever it shut it down. I haven't heard anything since.
How great was it that we got Tom Sawyer in it? That was
awesome.
Great.
That might be the highlight of the movie, is when Mike cranks up Tom Sawyer and Kerry's working out, and then he gets that, and he hears it, and it's like a light went on.
That was a goosebump.
I think that was a brilliant scene.
I don't know if they ever said, maybe when he was going into Texas Stadium in the scene, maybe they said modern day warrior, but I don't know that we heard that at all during the movie. I'm not sure about that. I could be totally wrong, but
the music
I don't
was
remember
muffled when he went into the stadium.
Well, they were playing.
No. You can hear Texas When I Die.
Yeah, that's what. It was
Texas When I Die. They actually played Tom Sawyer for like 3 seconds on that day in '84, and then they went to Texas When I Die.
Off.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I just got goosebumps remembering it. That's the bad thing about Peacock, is that the music.
People don't understand. It takes away. We can't explain why we're such passionate fans, because we don't get those entrances and stuff. It's at least we get the Bad Street in some of it, but not getting those entrances kills us.
That makes every wrestling fan mad. It's not just you guys. When fans hear Chris Jericho's WWE music instead of his other music in WCW, or when they hear, what really pisses me off as a golden era kid that grew up with WWE is when they don't play Rick Rude's music. I'm like, that one makes me really mad because I love Rick
the
Rude's
Road
original
Warriors.
music.
We could do a whole episode on music. I mean, I hear Smooth Operator and I think Rick Rude.
Absolutely. And who
And
knows that?
Sharp-Wrist Man
Just
is
us know that.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's such a crime that you don't hear the boy from New York City with Jimmy Boogie Wugman Valiant.
I just don't get the Rick Rude music. Like, that's not really like a band. It's not Led Zeppelin. Like, you can't. That music is copyrighted. Who copyrighted that? Is what I want. It's like band music.
But I mean, I can't listen to LaGrange, Tom Sawyer. I mean, you name it.
Texas When I Die.
Yeah.
Stranglehold. It's the music. I mean, that's when you hear a song and it takes you back. Like Eye of the Tiger. When I hear Eye of the Tiger, it's Hulk Hogan coming down the hallway at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
For me.
JB in the chat says DDP's hurts. And when you're watching the Nitro on Peacock and they play that really crappy grunge version of DDP's original song.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why they do it, but let's give credit where it's due that Tony Khan will open that checkbook. And
yes, that is awesome. When I was at the AEW pay-per-view, the first one after COVID in Jacksonville, and they started playing Jungle Boy's song, I'm not gonna try to sing that song, but that jungle song that I can't remember the name of it. Night to night. But you guys, that song. The whole freaking crowd just started singing it because everybody knows it.
Because it was on that toothpaste commercial.
I know, I remember that growing up. But Tarzan, as Andrew says. So that just when you know it because it's a song from the radio, it just makes it that much more fun, I think.
I mean, Iron Man. You hear Iron Man, and I think the Road Warriors. It's
But I'm a little different though. When I hear Eye of the Tiger, I'm thinking that the montage, the workout scene with Kerry Von.
Yeah, when he was running on the highway.
Boy, they ran that one into the ground.
Yeah, they did.
Man, why didn't they have Kevin do the splash off the top rope, turn backwards, the old where he turns in midair, that twist in the movie, he does it kind of just straight. And then they didn't do a triple drop kick in the movie. They did do a double one later. When they entered the ring, they did that triple clothesline on the Freebirds, and that looked great, but still, I wanted a triple drop kick.
I agree with your co-host.
Just being picky.
Terry, I agree with your co-host Andrew with the Road Warriors. Water Rush was a better song. I love WWE Water Rush. That was awesome.
But they used to go, "Oh, what a rush!" And then you hear, dun, 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 dun,
I know, but I'm just saying for a Jim Johnston special, Water Rush was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
If you were at the Crockett Memorial Cup when it went off, you got chills. For sure. It's kind of crazy thinking back now with all the cool entrances and stuff like that we got to see. Like, I mean, Freebird, everybody's thinking, oh, Freebird, for this. But no, to me, it's Hayes walking down in that big ass ring robe, that nobody's allowed to wear anymore.
Yeah, and they had them ready in wardrobe when they were filming those scenes, and they did not use them. The guy who played Buddy Roberts, Mike, on Booking the Territory interviewed him, and he said that the jackets were over there. He didn't say we didn't use them, but he insinuated, that was left on the table at the last second. That's fine. But somebody did think of it.
Yeah, I think overall, I thought that I mean, they used the Texas belt.
Go and
Yeah,
show
the
and
one thing I
tell.
did, the one thing I didn't like is Ric Flair had the big gold on in like '85 or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
that.
Big
It was
Gold never
supposed-
made an
yeah,
appearance in World
yeah.
Class.
And they put that as 86, actually. You know,
Yeah.
they actually put that as 86, and it was at Texas Stadium 85 that they, you know.
And
some
I'm pretty sure that
86
was a fan dude because it really looked like a medium gold.
It was
But
on
I
a
loved it. I
medium
mean-
Ric Flair, so that worked out well.
But I've had so much
7
fun
pounds
tonight
of gold.
with you guys. I can't thank y'all enough for coming on the show. Just to recap this movie, because we all love the content. You know, I wanted Terry to come on, and I wanted I thought I appreciate Nikki coming on and giving her perspective from somebody that, you know, that didn't. And Justin, you know, Justin's perspective. Can you imagine if you only know Kerry Von Erich as the Texas Tornado?
Yeah.
But me and Lance and Ike, it's just, you know, we have a passion about it. And it's still, to this day, most of it holds up. And we watched that triumph and tragedy of World Class, and just seeing all those clips, and it was just so good. I mean, it takes me back. And I remember how I felt when Kerry won the belt. I remember, you know, all of that. Just, you know, when Lance shares clips, I get so excited because most of the clips he shows, I was there. So I didn't miss a big show from 82 to probably 87. And then I slowed down.
Did you look for yourself in the crowd in the movie?
There
I am right there.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah, we
the
had
American
good
flag they
times.
had on that wall was way too big.
Way too big.
I was watching it with my boyfriend, and when they showed that first scene of the outside of the sportatorium, I told Tyler, I said, yeah, my buddy Dave I do the podcast with, he went to that shithole every weekend. He said it was hot as hell. He goes, it looks like
Yeah.
No air conditioning. It was not pleasant.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
those
hot
French
in the
fries.
summer, and just to make up for it, it was cold in the winter.
Man, I ate
But you
those
know,
French
it
fries.
just
Oh, Jack's French fries.
You can still get them at the state fair. He still has things at the Texas State Fair, so you can kind of get the same deal. It's different oil, but it's still Jack's fries every year.
Yeah, Jack. I was in a food service class with him one time, and he told me that he sold enough fries at the Texas State Fair he didn't have to work the rest of the year.
And then when James Beard was on, I was like, hey, we just had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. He's like, oh, that's cool. But I thought that opening scene with the outside of the sportatorium, it would bring you back, because it kind of brought me back just to the late 80s and early 90s when people hung out and did stuff outside and hung out outside events and weren't on their phones all the time. It kind of brought you back to that time period, at least, which was kind of fun to go back to.
I
Well,
put a
it
couple
was-
of tweets up of Kevin leaving the sportatorium, and they're all gathered around his truck trying to get a little bit of sugar. All the girls and stuff.
Oh God, could you imagine?
That was a full contact sport trying to get to the ring for them.
The girls were passing their phone numbers in a kiss through their mouth, trying to pass it to Chris Adams, trying to pass it to Kevin.
How did they get him out of the sportatorium?
You know,
guys
they
know?
were. If you see a recent tweet I put, you know, it was just a crowd. They're signing, and they're able to move through it. There's, you know, these half-ass security guards. They weren't police, but you know, they look like policemen. And you know, it was always good crowds. And the people out there were just young girls who, some of them, that's the best thing. They're the most happy memory of their life was being able to hug Kerry or Kevin on the way out of the sportatorium, or anytime they came to their high school, and oh, Kerry hugged me and looked at me in the eye. And you know, you get that on Facebook. You see a lot of people that have that kind of passion. That was, it's really touching. It's like listening to the Elvis channel, I always say, where people say, oh, I met my husband listening to Elvis, and they have a kind of a sappy moment, if you will. But those are true moments that I hear from people online all the time, because I do post a lot of stuff that takes people back. It's kind of neat and stuff.
Well, there was time or two that Kerry would kiss them back. I mean, there was a couple that Kerry would really lay them on.
Well, I am jealous in the fact that you guys were really the last people that got to grow up in a town or area like Dallas that had a huge promotion that was just dedicated to that area, to where those people became Dallas superstars. And, to kids like you, they're heroes. And really, that's really cool that you guys, that really didn't happen anymore, because now wrestling went, WWE after that. And you guys it gave it a more local feel. And I think that would have been cool to grow up in. Like, if I was growing up in Cincinnati and we had, a whole promotion like that right there in the, that would have been the best thing ever. So I'm jealous that you guys got to experience that.
The fact that we could go up to ringside, reach up to try to get an autograph or slap the mat, everybody wanted to slap the mat and see what it was like. We got to do all that. Then you turn on WWF in 84, 83, and, it's more sterile. The people aren't right up next to the ring or anything like that. And I thought, man, that is just, it's too bad, because that was the greatest thing in the world, holding your hand up, trying to get an autograph and stuff. It was just awesome.
My grandmother went to matches. My grandfather would take her, and they'd sit in those box seats. They had the little box seats. They were like a little caged off around at the top of before you went down to the lower section. And she said they'd sit in those box seats, but she said that the beer vendors would have bottled beer, so they pop the tops and pour it into a plastic cup and give it to them. But the wrestlers would get out of the ring and get those beer tabs. And then when they get them in a headlock, they'd use those beer tabs on their foreheads. So, I mean, can you imagine going? I mean, me and Ike went when you'd leave the sportatorium smelling like you done smoked 2 packs of Reds.
But that's funny. Besides, I have 4 of those chairs that were in the box seats, those little red chairs, 1952 specials at 53. And, they would cut the bottom of it. So the chair in front was about 2 inches shorter than the one behind it. But
you got 4 of them?
I've got 4 of those box seats. I don't have that many, much memorabilia besides newspaper clippings and programs. I do have a signed piece of the Sportatorium by Akbar. That is one of the only pieces I'm actually at my son's desk right now, but I keep it on my desk and stuff, like as a paperweight. But it's just a few things like that. I lost my thought, but yeah, I have a piece of the Sportatorium right here. That's the only thing you're missing, Dave, is a piece of this right here.
Well, I heard that you had 4, and I'm thinking 3 is the magic number. I think you'd be just as happy with 3 of them.
I'm surprised that Dave doesn't have a chair from the Sportatorium.
There wasn't any chairs.
They were all just benches.
They were benches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish, and we could have, like Doyle King here locally, Dave, he got that sign that says the Sportatorium, the opening, and he dug it out of the trash. And there I am a mile away at my store, and I didn't go down there and get any. I got the chair.
You should have dumpster dove. You could have got it.
I'm kicking myself all the time and stuff. That I didn't go down there and do it because they were dismantling it. I didn't think about it. One day there's going to be Twitter, and I can show this off.
I wish I would have thought to do it.
Absolutely.
Something.
I wish I still had all the autographed pictures, because no matter how many I had, I got a new one every match we go to, no matter what.
Those things are worth something now.
What happened to them,
original
Mike?
Promos?
There's no telling.
My mom threw out and sold all my crap in a yard sale. Did you get that treatment? Or
our friend Andrew Kella, Auction Andrew on Facebook, he's got a very neat piece of Kerry Von Erich memorabilia. It's it hung on the wall at Uncle Julio's Mexican restaurant for years. Kerry was in there with his daughters, and he autographed a napkin and a menu. but his daughters autographed the napkin with him. And he
Very
kind of
cool.
wrote a little note, and but he's got and it hung on the wall at Uncle Julio's for years. And Auction Andrew has it, and it's a nice little piece of memorabilia that I can tell you that I know for a fact it's legit because I saw it at Uncle Julio's when I ate there. But you wouldn't just get Carrie's autograph. You're probably getting the first autograph that Lacey and Holly ever signed. So,
They still got a Von Erich autograph picture at Campese's here in Dallas, Dave. I just saw it again the other day. I actually went around there to make sure to see if it was still up. And that and the original Dave and Buster's that burned down had an autograph of Carrie in there. Picture from the cage match and stuff
from Christmas. Yes.
Yeah. I could picture it because there was no photographers there that night. You're never going to see a magazine cover story on that actual cage match. None of the writers were there that night. There's a outside a photographer that was there because the same picture I'm talking about that was at Dave and Buster's was in the concourse of Reunion Arena for years and stuff. But there was, I know people are they can go try to find a magazine article about the cage match and show me pictures where Bill Apter or somebody took pictures. Yeah, there might be still shots from the episode, but somebody finds me a magazine that one of those guys took, I will mail you a world-class program.
It sounds like Lance or Dave or Ike should have been WCCW's Jim Cornette, started taking pictures over there.
Well, it was only our second time there.
Sounds like they needed their own picture taker, Lance.
And Ike almost got crushed up against the guardrail because he was trying to see Bugsy McGraw in the surge. When the surge happened, I'm pushing on the rails trying to keep him from crushing him because he's in front of me.
That would have been awesome if you went home. Where's Ike? Oh, he died. What happened to him? He got crushed by Bugsy McGraw. It was an unfortunate situation.
See, Bugsy's one of the ones that's kind of bitter because he got pushed out with that youth movement. So, anybody that wasn't the son of the owner is a little bitter about everything. But they pushed out those old guys in the beginning of '83 because, man, they had, the youth was here. It was so fantastic. So a lot of those guys are a little bitter. Al Madrill won't even talk about wrestling. I don't know what the situation was with his life, but he's one that won't talk. Ken Mantell won't talk about wrestling at all. He doesn't want to talk to anybody in wrestling at all and stuff. And that's straight from Johnny. He just doesn't want to do it. He don't want to talk to anybody he ever wrestled with. Nothing. It's crazy stuff. You never know.
Brian Adias tried to stay away from it for a long time.
He did. And then and now he's done a shoot interview and, I put a lot in that shoot interview with him. It was so different from the others. So, and I'm one of the guys that's pretty realistic. I'm a huge Von Erich fan, but I know their flaws and stuff like that. And Brian's was very, pretty much told it straight out and stayed calm. So a lot of other guys will tell stories about being in the locker room with those guys on specific stories and weren't there. Ricky Morton's talking about being in the at Fort Worth when Kerry and Flair went to that 1 hour draw where Kerry wasn't right. And Ricky Morton acts like he was in the locker room that night and stuff. One Man Gang was, and he talks about it, but that's one of those deals.
Me and Ike were there for that match.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Fort Worth?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
We were looking at, it was a school night. It was a big deal that we got to go. And
wow.
And I just know that they had I can't remember the name of the bank, but they had a clock in the arena, and that hour was over before the hour was over.
It's in the clipping I have that they cut the clock fast and stuff, and it was because Kerry had a fever, or the dog died that day. But
when Ric Flair describes that match in his book, I knew exactly which match he was describing.
Yeah, sure. That,
but it legitimately went 50 minutes. So
Kevin's doing another not a one-man show, but another deal where he's being interviewed by Dale Hansen in over at Will Rogers Auditorium in a couple of months.
Ike and our birthdays, his birthday's March 28th, mine's April the 2nd. And it's going to be the 29th. And we're going to try to do that for our birthdays.
Oh, excellent.
And spend the weekend because I can go to Dallas for the weekend. And I think that'll be a lot of fun to go to.
Well, I want you to bring that Texas belt behind you, not the one on the shelf, the one that they used in the movie. Just throw that in the car, okay? I got to get a picture with that. You said that years ago that when you came, you were going to bring.
Hey, if you'll let me have one of those seats from the Sportatorium, I'll leave it with you.
Listen, you've got something on that wall I gave you already. You know what it was? Do you ever remember what I gave you that's on that wall right now? Gosh, that's sad.
That mouse is running really hard in his head right now.
Damn, man. I freaking mailed it. I mailed it to you. It's the picture of David up there at the top of by the trunks. I sent you the whole magazine. You asked me where that picture was, and I said, yes. I know that. And I sent you that picture that's in there with the trunks.
I'm so sorry, Lance.
Man, one of my favorite magazines. I knew exactly what magazine. I went out there in the storage.
I still have it. I still have it intact because I actually bought the magazine. Because I bought the magazine off of eBay too.
Okay.
God, you're underappreciated, Lance.
So I did
said it.
Last thing, I did do it.
I didn't appreciate it. It's that I'm old.
I did a trivia question before the movie actually came out for anybody that saw the premiere or when they saw it on December 13th with me. And it was, where in the movie was a reference to the Cosmic Cowboys? That's what Carrie and Kevin came out were in mask. They had to trick Gino and Chris. And, it was Brad Stutz on Twitter that came up. It did actually do it. I sent him mailed him off a real 1985 program, a really nice one I had. He answered it because, and it's the first time I was saying it out loud. In the first scene, one of the first wrestling scenes at the Sportatorium, not the Fritz scene, in the corner, somebody with a Cosmic Cowboy sign. And I was like, well, look there. They did something for kind of the hardcores to pick up and stuff. I looked on that last night when I watched it. I was looking for every other sign to see. And there were a lot of signs in there. Yellow Rose and Kevin on David's debut match. They had somebody with a Yellow Rose sign, things like that didn't make sense. But that was one of the most inside things they got. Maybe Carrie saying he was going to Mexico. That might have been kind of inside because in '83, Carrie did go to Mexico and came back, had a little trouble coming back in the airport and stuff. So maybe that might have been another thing. I'm not sure or not.
Yeah, Von Erich's getting popped for something at Love Field was pretty regular.
Kevin has admitted, that if they were at a party, and things were going on, and it was the '80s, they were in their 20s, and they ruled the Metroplex. I mean, the Cowboys were down. The Cowboys weren't doing anything. They were the top draw.
I was going to bring that up earlier, Lance. I was going to say, I think one of the things that really helped WCCW in Dallas at the time is that the Cowboys weren't any good and the Rangers sucked. So it was like, let's go see wrestling instead.
A lot of people, Danny White was great. No, Von Erichs were the top thing in Dallas, and stuff. They were it. And, that's wonderful that, we have those great memories. I mean, we're so attached to it being here, and those guys, I mean, they lived down the street basically from us, they just lived in Denton. They grew up watching the same TV shows we watched. They were here and we could reach out and touch those guys. You wanted to be them. The girls could, hug them. I'm taking pictures right in their face and things like that. It was you can go to superhero movies, but we were going to see them live. And I did feel that way. I didn't appreciate what they were doing in their bodies. I watched Mick Foley do that elbow off the apron at the Sportatorium every single week. I was his entire run. I was right there front row. I never thought anything about him hurting himself. I just didn't understand.
He wishes that floor would have been concrete, because I guarantee you that that wood floor they had down was harder. Because it wasn't like plywood. It was like railroad ties side by side. I mean,
we weren't watching it with the eyes we have as older people. And I don't, I wasn't at the time. I was, fanboy. I'm into this, this wrestling. This is wild. I'm not paying attention to work rate. And I didn't care how many people were there as long as I was there.
Yeah.
That movie just fed the people that blame Fritz. It just fed what they believe. And we're not going to change anybody's longtime opinions on any of this. They're going to have their set ways, but that did help cement how Fritz is going to be seen for eternity. And that's what I felt bad about Kevin, is he was going to see his dad because this is how the masses, there's a small wrestling community, but anybody who goes see this, the masses, that they're going to see this guy is this son of a bitch, this Texas redneck, driving them hard. And, there was some love there. And you heard in David Manning, it's the first thing he said in your interview with him, your wonderful interview with him, that I really did like your interview with him, especially early on when he painted the picture of the booking meeting and stuff. That was neat stuff. His origin and stuff of getting started in wrestling. I really liked it. He misremembered a couple of things at the end, and they're all going to do that. It wasn't intentional, I don't think, and stuff. Ever since they had that Dark Tales of the Territory episode, and they all said that the Ric Flair Kerry cage match was escape the rules. I've had trouble with everything.
Yeah, I mean, but I get it, man, because I can't remember. I referee, 2-3 times a month, and I mean, we're in December, and I can think back, and I probably can't tell you. I probably couldn't tell you. I can't name them all, and that just happens. So I'm sure that small details do escape them. But I appreciate you saying that, Lance. That's real kind of you.
I'm really proud of it. I should listen to that one,
and it's been well received. It's doing great numbers. There's a David Manning. There's a hunker out there for him, for his stories. And yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed, I've got a reel up that my reels don't normally get 300 or 400 views. And I've got some that are, on TikTok, 25,000, 11,000, the bad performing ones are getting 1,000. So we're just real excited that everything David Manning related is going so good.
It was fantastic. The episode with his pet tiger that they put on World Class is not on the network. Mike and I just covered 5 years, and that was not on there. But I do remember when they aired it, and they showed him at home with the tiger and stuff.
Yeah.
And the match that you talked about, where Harley Race sent the interview to Mid Atlantic, and it was filmed in Fort Worth. He fought Kamala that night and stuff. He fought Ice on Friday night. Just to clarify that, because that's the kind of things I do. But that's what it was. Harley Race fought Kamala in Fort Worth on that Monday, and he fought Iceman in Dallas on Friday.
Well, they said from Tarrant County Convention Center, and I went and looked on Cage Match, and it was Iceman.
Ice was at the Ice versus Harley Race.
Yeah.
No, that was at the Sportatorium. It's on the episode.
Well, I believe you, because you know better than I would. I'm just saying.
David screwed him up because David went after Race, caused the disqualification. And you know what? Duke Kiyomuka was in the locker room that night, and I just wish they would have interviewed him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Duke Kiyomuka kids used to feud with Fritz, and they did claw versus claw matches.
He should be in any Texas history wrestling book as on the level with Fritz. That's what an impact this guy had, because I remember the people that, got me into wrestling, some older people, they, it was all about Duke Kiyomuka, and so I went back and I've seen it. There's a few matches here and there. And, so that would have been cool if they'd put him on there and stuff.
You remember Granny used to tell us about Duke Kiyomuka?
I don't remember what she said. I remember her talking about it.
Oh.
But I remember we were talking about Duke Kiyomuka at work today. This guy that was in there, one of my customers, we were talking about, I was going to have to get to the house and do the podcast. And he goes, yeah, I used to love Duke Kiyomuka. And I was like, you made a new buddy today.
That's excellent.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks again for joining us. Terry, tell everybody where they can find you, and tell them about your podcast.
Okay. Yeah. So, we got this big wrestling group that got together thanks to, Dave's buddy Conrad had started all these podcasts and got us all together. We're fans of that stuff, and we met some people. And one of those guys I met was our buddy Andrew Hermes. It's done probably 100 comments in the comment section tonight.
And he's been on our show several times.
Right. And we do a weekly, semi-weekly college football podcast, trying to figure out what it's going to end up being in a couple of weeks when college football's over. But that's called T&A Top 10. It's at T&A Top 10 on Twitter. At TWeave79, and he's at 30-year fan, so you can find us on Twitter there. We've also got some other social media, but we do that weekly, or try to do it weekly.
Andrew Hermes is like our Don Rickles. We call him in when we need someone to fill in a pinch.
That's a deep cut, Justin. Lance, tell everybody where they can find you and what's going on with World Class, the World Class Cast.
Well, the World Class Cast on Booking the Territory over there with Mike Mills, and it's kind of a fraternity house over there. I'm the serious one, actually. I do the World Class show. We've been doing it about 5 years, and we're fixing to go back. I did not join the group when Mike and I'm going to do 82 now, and Mike covered some of 82 with another co-host, but I'm going to go back and do 82. It's actually going to start at the end of 81. A couple of the very earliest World Class episodes. They don't have episode 1, but they start with 2, 3. There's also the Christmas 81 is on the network, and you can go see that what David Manning talked about on that episode where he's got thrown from one ring to the other, and it's a hell of a bump. It's really spectacular how he was thrown from one. It was a 2-ring show at Reunion Arena. I hate 2-ring shows, but that one, it's okay if you have the hard camera. Now today with, I really just want wrestling to have one camera. I want the hard camera. But anyways, they're Booking the Territory, and so World Class Cast. They hide me behind kind of a Patreon wall, but I try to make it worth it. I put a lot into it. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter at SMU Heavyweight, at Lance Peterson at SMU Heavyweight. And I've been going since 2011, putting all my pictures up, all the same old. Some of them are reruns, but I get new followers all the time. And, I'm really proud of the Brody picks that I have on there. I think they're really special. I've talked about it on the last show with Dave, and, there's a bunch, and those mean a lot to me. And, I also put up programs that the guys always joke about, because I have programs go back to 1947 with the Sportatorium. So, give us a look, and there's a few Booking the Territory episodes that are free on YouTube where Mike gives a little taste of what I bring to the show.
I was scrolling Twitter today, and I saw some of old WCCW picks from your Twitter account. So you definitely get on there and check that out if you guys like that.
Thank you.
My brother is in the Austin, Texas area. Ike, tell him what you're doing.
Oh, shoot. I just stretch people. I don't want to have y'all get to do. I run stretch zones around Austin area, so we're always out here running around, hitting the lake, being on the river, living the cush life, waiting for these boys to graduate so we can get out of here and go do whatever the hell we want to do for the next 30 years. But Ike and Nikki Miller on Instagram, Twitter. Used to be the half midget leprechaun. I know y'all missed that handle, but I had to let it go.
Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us. Also, I will point out that I'm sporting the Talking Wrestling with Pondwater Dave hoodie.
Yes.
Very nice.
Jumpinthepond.com. Jumpinthepond.com is where you can find yours. And I'm at Ref Super Dave, PWD. You can, if you're listening to the audio version, you want to see the video version, we'd like you to go to YouTube and like and subscribe at pwdpod.com. That will take you to our YouTube page. Also, if you need a wrestling belt, Big Time Belts has got you covered. Big Time Belts on Facebook. They can take a piece of metal and put it on leather. They create art. If you have a wrestling promotion, it's very, very affordable. You don't have to send your champion out to the ring anymore with a toy with stickers on it. You can get them something that's just like what they use on television at very affordable prices, of high quality, low prices. SWA, BIW, Battle Zone, AWA, PCW Mid Carolina, the Pennsylvania Grand Champion, everybody's using big time belts. You can't beat it. If you're of a fantasy football team, don't give them a trophy. Don't do cash. Don't try to humiliate them. Get a belt for your fantasy football team. I know that if I would hire people to help me if I could win a belt playing fantasy football. Maybe look at that. If you're watching right now, you can see an incredible fantasy football belt based on the AEW belt. Get a belt for your kid, your granddaughter's softball team or your football team. So when they do something, a sideline belt. This guy got one for the Vegas Golden Knights, and I mean, I'd rather wear disease, but I like that he's a fan. The Mississippi Seawolves that work with GCW, Gulf Coast Wrestling, have used big time belts. Big Time Belts on Facebook.com, and we'd like to thank you for sponsoring our show.
Heck yeah. And, that's getting to be a big deal when, I umpire softball and baseball, and that's getting to be a big deal when someone hits a home run. They get a belt in the or something, some type of thing in the dugout. So, yeah, if your kid's playing Little League baseball or softball, get them that belt to give them to crown the home run when they come into the dugout. So
the kids really love it, and the girls take selfies with it and post it, and they're real proud of it.
I mean, they do it at the major league level now. They do it at the major league level now. When you hit a home run, you go in the dugout and you get this big celebration thing. When I played T-Weave, you was told just go in there and act like you've hit one before.
Hey, I get a free drink after the game. We'll all run in a big pack to the concession stand. That's about all I got.
I got yelled at if you celebrate. It's like, act like you've hit a home run before, you slap dick. All
right. Take us home, Justin.
All right. Well, of course, Pondwater Dave, for the great Lance Peterson from the World Class Cast Podcast, for Terry Weaver from T&A Top 10 Podcast, and for Dave's brother from the same mother, Ike. My name is Justin Davis, saying take care of yourself and each other. So long, everyone.